here I am, yet again. I had an idea for something to cover here. Oh, looky, I have a cookie. Yep. Pumpkin cookie supreme. Greetings. Having I'll show you, a pumpkin cookie. Mom made them, old school recipe. So I was watching a video on another kind of folkish artist, and I'm like, okay, well, what are people doing? Like it's kind of trickling in. They'd be like, what it's some kind of quarantine show or something, whatever they're doing. I don't really use that in my description. But it was kind of cool. She was on her front porch. I'm like, okay. I think this artist, she's married, she has a husband, and, kids and all that. So she kind of has the mom approach. And I'm like, that's cool. My God, that's what we need or something, you know what I'm saying? And you start to see kind of the standards people keep at home versus like some big pop show that you can't even relate to, you know what I'm saying? So now I feel like if you're more folkish and you can, say, deal with performing on a smaller level, that is the direction forward, really, And I look forward to seeing people's videos, whether that's just talking or music or whatever. It's added motivation, something to do, something to focus on that's not negative, right? So today, or tonight, I double brewed it. Okay, what's that mean? All right. So, you got to be careful doing this, but you brew the coffee through, right? And I put a lot of coffee in there, so the Javalia, whatever. And then I will re-pour the coffee back into the reservoir. And then I will brew it a second time. And I'll put fresh coffee and whatever. So that's what this is. This is like double strength, Very, much stronger, but like a mild coffee, whatever. Okay, so I found something interesting here. Since it's April Fool's Day, I'm staying with that as my theme here. It's interesting. Now, pull up to the top of where I was. And this is on Wikipedia under Jester. So we're going to see what the history of the Jester is. Let's see. A jester or court jester or fool, seeing this will be symbolically, having something to do with today, archetype, whatever. All right. Was historically an entertainer during the medieval and Renaissance eras. Now also note to when that became popular, right? This would be after, say, the age of bards, as I would call it, to where it is now for entertainment, right? Are you holding the history? Are you keeping the lineages? I don't think so, not at this point. Not with the Jester. That's more about entertainment, versus history and whatever else connections, right? So let's see. During the medieval and Renaissance eras, who was a member of the household of a nobleman or monarch. See, that's similar to a druid or a bard, that you would belong to a specific house, right? Employed to entertain guests. Jesters were also itinerant performers who entertained common folk at fairs and town markets. So that would have been something that was going on, right? Jesters are also entertainers who perform at modern day historically themed events. Okay. So there are actual professional jesters even to this day. Jesters in medieval times are often thought to have worn brightly colored clothes and eccentric hats. Now also, the more colors you wore would denote your rank. Also, what colors you wore. Scarlet was generally associated with higher rank, right? Or higher end of society, nobles, so on and so forth, right? Brightly colored clothes and eccentric hats in a motley pattern, and their modern counterparts usually mimic this costume. Jesters entertained with a wide variety of skills. Principal among them were song, music, and storytelling. Does that not sound like a bard? You see, it got twisted into being a big joke mentality in a way. Right? But many also employed acrobatics, juggling, telling jokes, such as puns. My grandmother was big into puns and things like that. That was her thing. Stereotypes and imitation and magic tricks. So it's also has to do with illusion, right? Sleight of hand, right? Your modern day magician might have a connection back into a jester. Think about it. Much of the entertainment was performed in a comic style, and many jesters made contemporary jokes in word or song about people or events well known to their audiences. So that's similar to, say, a bard. See, if a bard didn't like you, they could, okay, let's say they were a traveling bard. They would go through the land talking shit, basically, in song form, right? Etymology. The modern use of the English word jester did not come into use. Here's the interesting part. Now, note the eras at which this came in. Until the mid-16th century, during Tudor times. Now, let's note something major that happened, right? 1603, Queen Elizabeth I, this is me adding, and Granuaile O'Malley died the same year. Now, you have the Tudors coming in, and you have Brehon law, pardon me, being affected and disrupted. Now, this wouldn't have had something to do with that? Oh, yes, it would have. You see, you're turning the storytelling arts into a joke, into entertainment, where before it was taken a lot more seriously. Of course, that is in my opinion. The modern term derives from the older word gestor, that's Gestor, or gestor with a J, originally from Anglo-Norman French meaning storyteller or minstrel. Other earlier terms included fool, disseur, buffoon, and border. So you see, you're turning the bardic arts into entertainment and into a foolish thing to do. That's why it's treated as a joke, right? These terms described entertainers who differed in their skills and performances, but who all shared many similarities in their role as comedic performers for the audiences. So you see, as the bard tradition was outlawed, right? The language was affected, so on and so forth. You see the changing by the elite of what the view is of that position that was very prevalent and important at one point. All right. Many royal courts throughout English royal history employed entertainers, and most had professional fools. Right. Sometimes called licensed fools. We still have that, in modern ways, in many ways. Look at your modern comic. Directly related, right? Entertainment, including music, storytelling, and physical comedy. Pardon me. It has also been suggested they performed acrobatics and juggling. See, I did that growing up in a way, Let's see. During the reigns of Elizabeth I and James I of England, William Shakespeare wrote his plays and performed with his theater company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, later called the King's Men. All the King's horses, all the King's men, put Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? Okay. Clones and I said clones. It is kind of true though. It's kind of a clone of a bard, but then they changed the meaning. Clowns and jesters were featured in Shakespeare's plays, and see, that's a way of popularizing that situation. And as they said, it became bigger and bigger in the 16th century. It existed prior to that, but let's see. That's interesting. Political significance. Let's see. Scholar David Carleone, sorry, that's lion, Carleone, has cast doubt on the darling political jester, calling historical tales apocryphal, and concluding the popular culture embraces a sentimental image of the clown, okay, trickster, okay, anyway. So they kind of show a picture. It looks very much like kind of like an old school devil character and how they would portray that, whatever. Puppet shows, let's see. But I was just thinking about that in relation to the overwrite of, say, the bard tradition, right? And coming up with, say, a different title, whatever. So minstrel, let's read this. The medieval European entertainer originally described any type of entertainer such as musician, juggler, acrobat, singer, or fool. So that's related, right? Interesting. Let's see. England before the Norman conquest, the professional poet was known as a scope, S-C-O-P, or scop. Shaper or maker, who composed his own poems and sang them to the accompaniment of a harp. Gleemen, troubadours. And you can see that would have formed a guild, which is what they're getting into. So now you have another tradition forming, and it is overriding the older tradition. Okay, so we're going to bard in, let's say, in medieval Gaelic and British culture, a bard was a professional storyteller, verse maker, music composer, oral historian, and genealogist. Now that is the biggest difference. Where the genealogy aspect go to? Yeah. Originally, bards were a specific lower class of poet, contrasting with the higher rank known as Fili in Ireland. I've known that. So just for, discussion's sake, you would say bard, but it's not really accurate when it comes to the higher function. Alrighty? So Fili was a member of an elite class of poets. That is what was downgraded through, in my opinion, the whole Jester tradition. All right? Etymology, the word Fili is thought to derive from the Proto-Celtic, let's see, wildudos, okay, meaning seer, one who sees. So what was downgraded? What is being seen, what is being shown through imagery, through stories, etc. Tested on the Gaulish inscription from, let's see, Larzac, as Eudluios, whatever, which is the feminine generative singular form, okay, derived ultimately from the verb widlu, to see. This may suggest that the Fili were originally prophetic poets who foretold the future in the form of a verse or riddle rather than simply poets. That is the change. In my opinion, that's what was attacked. All right. Let's see. Elite scholars, according to the textbook of Irish literature, Eleanor Hole, the Fili is to be regarded as in the earliest times as combining in his person the functions of magician, lawgiver, judge. Now notice they use magician as in magi. That has a Persian reference which has zero to do with the Brehon. Just saying. Counselor to the chief and poet. They're just using that because that's what people are familiar with, but there's a deeper reason, in my opinion, of course. Let's see. Later, but still at a very early time, the opposites seem to have been divided. The Brehons devoting themselves to the study of law. Now, as the tutors came in, you will notice there was an override of the Brehon law and an upping of, say, jesters and everything, for entertainment. But a downgrading of comprehension of law, intellectual, content, so on and so forth. All right? Brehons devoting themselves to the study of law and the giving of legal decisions. The Druids, arrogating to themselves the supernatural functions with the addition, possibly, of some priestly offices. And the Fili themselves being henceforth principally as poets and philosophers. The division seems to have already existed in Ireland. Here it is, at the time of St. Patrick. Now, what did I say about St. Patrick? His main site was overlaid, a clearing that was made for the sovereignty goddess Macha, also associated with Morrigan. See, St. Patrick, whose preaching brought him into constant opposition with the Druids, who were evidently, at the time, regarded as the religious leaders of the nation. So again, what were jesters used as? To undermine and degrade the position of the Druids, period. That's my opinion, of course, and the Fili especially. The insults, the turning it into a big joke, right? Though there does not seem to be much sign that they were, as they undoubtedly were even at an earlier age in Britain and Gaul, sacrificing priests. Well, that's what they say. So then again, another degrading, saying, oh, they're human sacrificers, they're barbaric. No. I'm not buying that. Nope. And then you have the monks overriding the stories of the bards. So it is on many levels a direct targeting. All right. Decline. The ultimate accommodation of Christianity within Irish Gaelic society resulted in a strain on the resources of the chiefs, of course. So they're going to hit them from many angles to take over. And in that, they were required to provide, land and titles for both Fili and bishop alike. So they may play to them and say, well, you've given these guys this big position. Why give them that? You could be taking this back for yourself, that type of thing, right? So you had the Fili and the bishop in conflict with each other. Makes sense, right? What position did they hold prior to that override? Consequently, a decision was made in the 6th century. Here it is again, it started. To limit the number of Fili to certain families who were respected and believed to be poets as a birthright. Wow. So that became birthright connected, right? The greatest of these families included the O'Delay, several of whom were accorded the rank of Chief Olam of poetry of all Ireland, and O'Higgins, that would be related to ancestor of, which is what O means, right? So that could be woman or man, theoretically. Most likely a man, but it is what it is, you never know. Who are hereditary Fili in more than one Gaelic house. For instance, let's say, this is me adding, that chief poet only had a daughter. He would most likely pass that on to her if he had a brain in his head. She has the connection, right? Such as O'Connor, Sliggett, the McDermotts, the McDonough, and O'Doherty. The O'Malley were chiefly Olams of the Seol Myriad Hogg, whatever, I don't know how to say it. It goes on down the list. But you can see what I'm saying. The override, legacy, all right? Many manuscripts preserving the tales once transmitted by the Fili have survived. But how many, you see? What is the treasure trove, say, that would have been there without all of this override and disruption? Because this way of living was widespread. So now we're going to read Scold. Since I have my Nordic background too, so I just cover this. Let's see. Skald, or Old Norse skald, meaning poet, is a general term used for poets who composed at the courts of Scandinavian leaders during the Viking Age. So that is 793 to 1066. Now you notice 1066, Charlemagne hits. What happens? Those traditions start dropping off, right? And continued in the Middle Ages, 5th century to 15th century, skaldic poetry forms one of two main groups of Old Norse poetry, the other being the anonymous Eddic poetry. Moving along. Most prevalent meter of skaldic poetry is, let's see, Drokkevæt, I don't know. The subject is usually historical and encomiastic, detailing the deeds of the skald's patron. Okay. There is no evidence that the skalds employed musical instruments, but some speculate that they may have accompanied their verses with the harp or lyre. Okay. Interesting. Skaldic poetry of the Scandinavian Middle Ages. Ooh. I'm going to move down though and read a little more. Word skald is perhaps ultimately related to Proto-Germanic skalis, which is, let's see, sound, voice, shout. Skolsong, son of praise, or song of praise, right? Okay. Ooh. Counterpart of skald is the scope. Interesting. English scold. See, it's related. So say if they didn't like you, you might get a bad poem. All right, let's read this. Scop. S-C-O-P was a poet as represented in Old English poetry. The scope is the Old English counterpart of the Old Norse skald. With the important difference that skald was applied to historical persons, and skop is used for the most part to designate oral poets within Old English literature. Very little is known about the mythical skop and its historical evidence. Her existence is questioned by some scholars. That's interesting. Cool. I haven't read about this before, so this is interesting. Alrighty. Let's see if I find anything else. Well, scop became English scoff, S-C-O-F-F. The Old Norse skald lives on in modern English, word of a similarity, deprecating, meaning scold. Oh my God, mocking, scolding, once. So that was like an art form. Was to me, it's like the art of the insult or something. I don't know. It seems like it. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. That was cool. Wow. So you can see that how if, say, someone like that had influence and people in power did not like them, they might have to hide like Robin Hood in the woods, show up, sing a song, and then run away. The ultimate joke. Oh my God. You like show up and sing a song in front of the city county building or something, talking shit. I don't know. Whatever. Well, it's interesting to see how degraded the position of, say, the Fili became, and how big of a deal that was, you know, for so many hundreds of years, and then all of a sudden, it's towards of the Tudor dynasty, you know, flexing power over everywhere, really, you know, in many ways, where you have one, let's say one record company left standing versus, you know, a whole bunch of small ones. So now, say, distribution, as I relate to this a lot with music, if there are only a handful of, say, international distributors, if you're not connected to them or on good terms, you don't get distributed at all. And so let's say someone has enough influence, they can pretty much choose who goes up and who goes down in the industry based on who gets distribution, who gets the deals, doesn't matter. So you could have artists that were way more talented, let's say, than the ones they have, but the ones they have will play ball, so they don't care. I don't think most people pay enough attention to the quality of what they listen to even notice. It's like being in a room full of people that are drunk off their ass. They're not listening. So if you're coming in there with like a, you know, like a serious spiritual mentality where, you know, you want to do a ritual and this and that you are dealing with people who are not into that, they're not going to respond to it, and therefore the vibe won't be there. So why do it? Different than, say, sitting around with a group of friends around a campfire or something, and you've got a glass of mead or whatever, but you're not drunk off your ass. You are into what's happening. You know what I mean? And that's how it is on more of a personal level versus, you know, you're some big time, the whole rock star thing. That's why I don't like that, because it just is, it feels very impersonal and disconnected. All right. Time to let Kitty back in. Give me just a second. I have to do it. Love Kitty. Kitty must be taken care of. It'll take me a quick second. I'm back. Back in the saddle again. Kitty's taken care of. Sometimes I feel like I'm already like retired. I'm like the old man. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. come back out. Want to come out of retirement? You're like, I guess. God damn it, everybody's retired now. You might as well. Holy shit. I don't know. I felt that way though. I was like looking around at what was around me. I was already old school back in the day, so I'm like, what do I do now? And I'll just continue playing acoustic music because no matter what happens, I will have the ability to have music more than likely. Whether I have power or I don't, that's something to consider. Like imagine you are top heavy, say on computers, right? But you have nothing else to do outside of computers. And all of a sudden, computer is shut off. You're like, what have I been doing with all my time? Yeah, that's a good question, right? Something I consider to think about. Like, what is this reality? Am I simply talking into space? You know? Not really, I don't think so. But it's like friendship at a distance, you know what I'm saying? Like, can I just gather all of the cool people I've met online and we can just hang out together? I wish, that'd be cool. That'd be rad. Oh my God. You're like, are you sure you would want to? Well, it depends on the people, I guess. You learn that camping out somewhere. It's nice, you know, meeting up online or whatever, but you know, when you're personally there with someone, you get to see what their personal habits are. You're like, would I really want to hang out with that person? I don't know. Maybe you would. See if I find anything else interesting while I'm sitting here scratching it and smoking. Scoff. And this is cool. Saw this before. I wanted to look it up. Ooh, Mystery of Anglo-Saxon Scoff. Professor of literature at University of California, San Diego. Let's see, Seth Learer suggests what we have come to think of as the inherently oral quality of Old English poetry may be a literary fiction of its own. Early English scholars have different opinions on whether or not the Anglo-Saxon oral poet ever really existed. See, this makes me wonder, like if there is a systematic targeting of those poetic traditions to downgrade them. But that's just my opinion. Mead Hall poet, see, that would have had an ancient connection. Now, why? Because what do you have to do during the winter time, right? It's cold. You're sitting around the fire. More than likely, that's where storytelling tradition came from. You know, it was a way to keep your mind interested. Yeah. I think and feel that holding on to these older traditions moving forward is key and paramount, right? Because what are you going to have if say it breaks down? Well, you will have the capability of things that do not run on power. Something to think about. Move this out of the way. So people who would say make fun of grandpa all of a sudden they're like, hey, Grandpa, how do we survive? And it's like, well, you never wanted to know before. But if that breaks down too much, there's nobody to go to. So that means a very severe learning curve. And I used to get down on myself for being more simple or whatever, but you know, what does it really come down to? What do you want to be around? You know what I mean? To me, I'd rather have a simple song that is real versus everything dressed up, all fancy and whatever, you know. And that's cool to do sometimes, but that tells you how powerful the spoken word was. For it to be targeted to that level, whoa. And then that would have affected entire families. Now, say you would have to, in order to survive, become more of a jester type. Versus now the poets that would have kept the oral tradition of the family are now affected. You go, wow, yeah. Where that tradition may have kept together certain genetic knowledges, right? But if you weren't a wealthy elite person, there wouldn't be as, you know, strong of a record. And then you got to ask, what are the influences? I'm going to support, you know, all the small-time artists I saw before, because I feel something from their music. It feels more authentic. Is it going to be as perfect and slick as, say, some pop music, whatever? Probably not, but I don't care. You know? All I ever had was a simple song to say, I love you so, just wanted you to know. I'll be waiting down by the riverside for you to see, for you to know. Heart and home set straight down by the riverside. Whoa. You say you didn't know. No, I didn't know. Like a froggy deep down in my throat. Say you didn't know. down by the riverside waiting for me. My love, yeah, a little rough down here. My sweet love to stay. Told me it was all just a joke. Stay down there by the riverside and choke. No one wanted to hear wisdom, no, no. It's just a joke down there, they say. Saw the war-torn country on the side, you know. Bodies laying in the streets as I go. Ha ha ha, it's just a big joke, I don't think so. So won't you shine in the wheel? It's rough down here. I know you can see trouble on the breeze coming down. So shine and we from the edge of time, beyond time, we're still sitting there, song in the hand, home and heart, you can say what you want to say as you circle round. And all we ever had, and all we ever needed was heart and home. So witches gather round, oh, wise ones on the breeze, they said. Waiting down there by the riverside for you. On the shoreline, see waves rolling over the jagged rocks coming into the bay. Great Lord, the last of the pirate queens, you can say, but I still call your name, run your way, oh, riding high on the sea. Grandmother on the way, grandmother on the way to be, shine on. Shining me forevermore, say, oh, sure as a wave curls over jagged rocks coming into the bay, coasting. See it coming over the horizon. music on the way. Say you didn't know the trouble was on the way. You know it's coming our way. So will you dance a fire? Will you circle around? Oh, said circle around. Oh, circle around. Hear you on the breeze, calling us home, you said. Home and heart. Think I got it. Me a woman on the home. Robin, I am straight down the chimney beat. Wow, I shall return. Yes, circle round.